Hello there, I'm Sconchulus, and this is TEPPEN Deck Teck, where I present to you decks that are fun, strong, or interesting. Today we are playing the most destructive hero art in TEPPEN, Sekia KURETSUHA. Widely considered unplayable, this art has the potential to be a total board wipe for both players. To enable this high-risk strategy, we are playing 2 brand new cards with Invasion, 3 of Sigma's Dao Velgarder, and 1 Terranoid. Both deal -5 HP, not damage, when invading, which makes them the perfect setup for the brand new Ascends, Daniel, Fabrone, and Hunter. Hunter especially is great for taking out big threats, but drawing multiples is pretty awkward, so 1 copy definitely feels right. But if you really want to play 2, you can drop the Titanic Gatekeeper, but Titanic helps a lot against Felicia and Gar. On the other hand, Daniel Fabrone is a card you need to max out on. This card is immediately defining the way Black is played this season. His Ascend is a ton of value and even provides additional Ascend fodder, which means this card combos with itself. Clearing both units without risking another Ascend from Daniel is hard for any deck, and pushes this card into busted territory. So to have him online right away, you always want to start the game with your invasions. Terranoid is especially great since Daniel can proc the -1 2 times. Just keep in mind, that will happen after the Ascend. I should also mention, the way Velgarder works, you have to either invade or when played them. You can't get both effects. So, pre-revenge, you almost always invade them, and after revenge, you want to play them from hand. But if you do meet the Ascends early, playing the 4 MP Dog as a 4/6 is really good pressure, and invading the Revenge Dog is still good if you have to, you just don't get a discount. Our other best turn 1 play is the staple Dark Condemnation, which along with our invaders should force our opponent to play a unit first, which we can destroy with Corrosion or Daniel Fabrone. Like many a red deck, this strategy kinda needs your opponent to play first, so having ways to make them do it is essential. And now we can finally talk about the engine that has carried Sekia for multiple seasons, Faith Humans, with Inero as the linchpin. Inero will deliver a massive -3 HP whenever another human dies, most notably Satsuki, who is one last good turn 1 play, and our only proactive one. Combo that with an arrow before she dies, and you're already gaining value. After that, we have 3 Fong, the best and most efficient way to set up Daniel, and eventually a huge threat in his own right, thanks to Faith and Flight. Before you get that far, we do have 1 more Faith unit to ascend over them with Seth. Unlike Fabrone, Seth doesn't need any particular setup, so they are the ideal pivot to win trades and keep pressure on board. But Seth's most important effect has to be the +3 life they heal to our hero. Other black decks like Despair and Dancing Dead have an absurd amount of healing this season, which Seth will give us a chance against, but those matchups still usually go to time with them ahead. That's why we have 1 more card, a card that I think is 100% non-negotiable for Black this season, Blood Destiny. One of the coolest cards from Core that has only ever seen fringe experimentation, this card defines the Black Mirror by simply providing a buff of more than a dozen attack. This is the one way we can go over the top of every other Black deck and end the game in 1 shot. But because of the huge risk, you should try to use it on a flyer or a heavy piercer, and you should always use it at the very last second so your opponent can't respond afterwards. And one of the best targets for it is Solo, an amazing comeback mechanic and counter to almost any unit, especially backed up with Sekia. Strong as they are, Unleash makes him a bit of a dead draw early on, and our healing from Seth can make Solo a bit slow to come online, so we're only playing 2. Solo is also 1 more human for the Sekia Special, Reluctant Initiation. The easiest way by far to set up Sekia for 3. The card puts in work when it works, But after playing it a lot, against green, this card is just asking to lose to Kinzuki Resistance on the spot. So because of that, I eventually dropped the second copy I was running for Destructive Force Vile 5. The sickest way to set up Sekia ever. The fact that he also damages your own units makes it feel like he truly belongs in Sekia. But his massive MP cost does make him a bit hard to actually get into play. It's so worth it though. If you have Vile, this is the best deck in Standard for him. And if you don't, just stick with Initiation or another legendary that you prefer. Also, I gotta mention, Vile as well as Seth, who you definitely need for the deck, are both supplemental cards, meaning you gotta go to the soul shop to craft them for whatever reason. And finally, we have two brand new legendaries, but first, you probably noticed we're not playing Wesker. He just didn't feel flexible enough and is way too big of an investment this season, especially when we already excel at removing threats. That said, the legendaries we do have start with the massive finisher, BOW Tyrant, an immediate staple for any black player. It's definitely an amazing opener, putting in way more than 8 MP of pressure, but I think this card shines much brighter as a game ender. Once you already ran your opponent through their best answers, and more importantly their life total, Tyrant is guaranteed to end the game. And last of all, allowing us to shift into Turbo, we have the third energy genius, Kirk. To get the most obvious play out of the way, Kirk can summon a third Tyrant, but that's super niche and very rare since one Tyrant needs to stay untransformed while the other dies twice. It definitely does happen, and it's a huge pop-off when it does, but that's not why we're playing it. The main reason we do is that Kirk is another unrespondable -5 HP with our invaders, which after the initial -5 is a devastating swing in tempo, and after his huge when played effect, Kirk will become a monster in his own right, especially when backed up by Corrosion or Sekia to protect him as he creates more and more power. The fact that he also provides life back to our hero as a byproduct of the process is just proof of his genius. Here's the deck QR view, and with all that said, let's get into it. Game 1, we are up against Kikosho, and I apologize, but OBS didn't record audio for these, and by the time I realized the update was here, so I couldn't re-record them. You guys will just have to make do with some Mega Man soundtracks. Terrible, I know. Our opponent starts off with Princess, and rather than clear it right away with Fong, we'll charge up to 10 and lock in a Terranoid, because as soon as we clear Princess, our opponent is going for a full Felicia play. They still do go for it, but we are able to use Fong and Daniel Fabrone to clear it before they go for the third level. They do still play down the juiced Ayasu from their hand, and our Terranoid will defeat their Princess, Daniel Fabrone will defeat their Nana, and we will ascend another Daniel Fabrone to defeat their third unit that they play. Their Ayasu will be defeated, and we will use Sekia to defeat their Princess before they get any MP boost. They'll play down a second Ayasu, and we'll play Fong to contest it. They play down a Nana in the middle lane, and Fabrone will bring that in range of Reluctant Initiation, which we activate, but unfortunately they have Dreams of Restoration to put Ayasu back in their hand. That means they still have 2 Ayasus in deck, and with Felicia, that could be a big problem for us. They play down Felicia followed by Ayasu, and they play down the third Ayasu, which goes up to 311. This will be a big problem if we can't get them all within Sekia range. We get one of them in range, and our Velgarder should be able to get one other unit down there. Our opponent activates Shield, and we will search a Corrosion to defeat their last unit, hopefully, as long as the 50-50 goes right. Thankfully, it does go to the Ayasu, and we activate Corrosion before Sekia, which could have been a huge misplay if they had any heals. Thankfully, they don't, and on resolution, we can clear the board with Sekia KURETSUHA. Our opponent activates Disarm, and we respond with another Dark Corrosion, which lets them use a White Cat Circus to potentially prepare another and final Felicia play. But for now, they just go for Cammy, and they will use a Shield to protect her from any blockers, but that wasn't what we were going for. We already have our Invader locked in, which will hit under the shield and defeat Cammy. They activate another White Cat Circus. I can only assume a Felicia is coming, but we already have the game pretty much locked in, especially when we activate Blood Destiny on our flyer to end Game 1. Game 2, we're taking on the ultimate test for our Rogue Akuma deck by challenging the meta Akuma deck. Hopefully, we'll be able to show that the underrepresented Sekia KURETSUHA is just as capable as Raging Demon. We have just about everything you want for a good open with this deck, and we'll start things off with Dark Corrosion to force our opponent to play first. They play down April and we'll play Satsuki in the middle lane, but they're able to block it with a zombie followed by a second April. Our Terranord hits the field, defeating their Velgarder in the bottom, and we will use our Fong to defeat the other April. Their Velgarder hits the field and defeats our Terranord, and we'll load a Velgarder of our own, which should be able to contest it, and they have another Velgarder to defeat our Fong. Ours hits the field in front of theirs, and it will be able to defeat it on the trade, and we'll play down our singular buffed Satsuki, and they're able to block it with the very same zombie that defeated the first one. Real lucky for him. Our opponent will activate Dark Condemnation, and we will do the same, both of us searching a Corrosion to our pocket. We both have 2 now, and our opponent will play down Fong. We will use our Daniel Fabron to defeat one of their units, and they will use a Daniel Fabron as well. They will ascend Fong over their Seth, and we will play Fong in front of Seth and use Dark Corrosion to defeat their Seth. Our opponent responds with Gathering Effluvium to stop themselves from taking any extra damage from Fong and to keep us off of Ascend fodder. And at this point, we have no choice but to charge back up and hope that a good opportunity to take control of the game presents itself. Our opponent plays down April, and we will load a Terranoid and play Fong in the top lane to defeat their zombie. They play another zombie, and we will use our Daniel Fabron and our Terranoid to clear their field. They play down their zombie for the second time, and we will be able to clear both of their units with a huge Sekia KURETSUHA. Our opponent is able to respond with Seth to defeat our Terranoid, going up to an 8-11, and they play down their revenged, when played, activated Ascended Velgarder, and we will use Corrosion on their Seth. Our solo is defeated by their Velgarder, and we'll play down our second solo to defeat the Velgarder. They have another Velgarder, though, to defeat our Daniel Fabron, and we are going to go for Reluctant Initiation. They'll respond with Corrosion, but we'll have the second Reluctant Initiation, which will just force out the second Corrosion, and they will stay just out of Sekia range on both units. We still have to take the Sekia on one of them, because otherwise we are dead, and we have to play down Seth without his Ascend to even stay in the game at all. Our opponent uses Hunter with their hero art. No 2-for-1, but they also needed to do something to stay in the game. We'll play down a Narrow to contest Hunter, and we will ascend Seth to get a bit of health back. Our opponent plays down Fong, and they invade a Velgarder, which is able to defeat our Narrow. We'll play down a Velgarder of our own with the Ascended effect ready, and they will use Daniel Fabron to defeat it. That's a lot of pressure to chew through at the end of the game here. We'll play down a Narrow, and our opponent will go for Blood Destiny just a second too late to clear the game, and thankfully we can block it, but it was obvious that they had to destroy. They activate Gathering Effluvium, and we will use Blood Destiny to give them Game 2. Game 3, we are up against Spike Launch, and after going toe-to-toe with one of the best black decks, it's only natural to take on the very best, played by one of the best players of the season. So hopefully we'll get a little lucky and be able to pull a fast one on him. We start things off by invading a Velgarder, and our opponent will also set up an invasion of their own. You can tell by the 8 AP it's gonna be Tyrant, and when their Tyrant hits the field, our Velgarder will as well and transform one of them. Our opponent plays down an Ooze, and we will play Fong to block their Tyrant, and ascend Seth to defeat it. Our Velgarder will defeat their Ooze before we take any damage, and we will use Daniel Fabron to defeat their Tyrant, taking no damage from the trades. Our opponent's Fong will get in the first blood on us, and our Velgarder will bring their Oichi into range of Sekia KURETSUHA. We'll defeat 4 units, 2 of our own, and our opponent will play down Dark Mantis, which we will defeat using basically the same unit in Satsuki. Our opponent plays down a Blade, and we will block it with Satsuki, followed by an Ascend of Seth over it. Our opponent activates Dark Condemnation, and we do the same. Both of us searching Corrosion to our EX. Our opponent now has 2, and they will use theirs to defeat our Seth, leaving their blade unscathed and getting in the 3 damage from the blade. We will use our Fong to block their Cerberus before we take any more damage, and we will play down our Revenged Ascend-affected Terranoid in the top lane, and we will use Sekia to defeat all of their units and one of our own. They will block our Satsuki with an Ooze, and we are able to defeat it with the effect of our Fong. And our opponent did not see it coming. We are able to defeat them unrespondably with Blood Destiny. There's nothing they can do, and we take Game 3. Here we are again, and I hope I made a good case to put to rest once and for all of the Sekia slander. This art is far from unplayable. It's super fun and distinctly has some advantages over the damage black arts, especially with Kikosho in the meta. Clearing a whole field of shielded units is one of the best feelings for a black player, but realistically, 80% of the time, this art does feel like a more restricted Dark Destruction. So you really gotta go out of your way and commit to making it stronger. You gotta take the trades that will be worth using Sekia over Dark Destruction. As far as matchups go, green is the reason to play this deck. Kikosho is so popular, and this arguably does a little bit better than Spike Launch against Kikosho. And the other color that you're gonna see a ton of this season, black, is so much fun to play with this deck. It's a lot of the same cards getting thrown back and forth, but you have a much cooler and more unique and higher impact potential way to win the matchup. You just gotta hope that your Blood Destiny is the one that connects. Against red, it almost entirely comes down to which one of you goes first will be the loser, and against purple, Hunk specifically gives us problems, but if you clear that one guy, all of our effects should be able to clear any of their other units pretty effectively. I also have a budget version here for you, of course. This version goes a little heavier on the Faith humans with Anero and Atomo Soren to add her back, as well as Kenji replacing our solos as another strong late game unit. This is almost entirely common, so it is very budget if you want to play it. As for the next episode, let me know down below whether you would rather see the very first red deck on the channel, or something for point match. Thank y'all for watching. Please like the video if you liked the video, subscribe if you subscribed. Once again, I'm Scoutulus, and I'll see you in the next one.